putting her own life on the line. That's what a mom tells us that she was willing to do last Saturday night when gunshots were fired right in front of a liquor store in Del Paso Heights. Now, bullets grazed her baby and her 10-year-old child. And tonight, in an exclusive interview, the family speaks with our Jeannie Nguyen for the first time. Jeannie, absolutely terrifying. I mean, what was really going through that mother's head as all this was unfolding?
Alex, speaking to the mom today, she was very emotional. She and her kids are actually still very scared because they don't know if it'll happen again. We have decided to not show their faces or use their names, and they tell me they won't feel safe until these people are behind bars.
What happened to your hand there?
It got scraped like by a bullet.
What was supposed to be just another quiet night turned violent for this Sacramento family.
I thought it was fireworks. Then I ran, then we all started running.
On Saturday night, Sacramento police say 4 people were hurt in a shooting near Del Paso Boulevard and Fairfield Street. 2 of those people were kids, a 1-year-old and a 10-year-old. Today, that family shares their story, but out of fear of their safety, they want to keep their identities hidden.
My daughter was complaining that she was thirsty and would have nothing to drink up in the house.
This mom's 1-year-old daughter's complaints led the family to walk to Sunland Liquor to buy something for her to drink.
Next thing you know, I just heard gunshots just start firing, and I just started running.
Once the family made it safely home, Mom realized her children were hurt by the gunfire.
I realized that my son got grazed because he's like, Mom, I got grazed. My daughter got grazed, and it went through her stroller.
Her 10-year-old son clearly remembers that moment.
I was like, I'm bleeding.
Days later, that fear still remains.
Feel a little bit scared and nervous.
For this mom, she says the hardest part was doing everything she could to make sure they did not get killed.
I had to tell my son, my 10-year-old, to run. Like, that really did hurt it. It's me speaking of this and saying this, like, it really hurt.
The love she has for her children became top priority that night, even if it meant putting her own life on the line.
I wish that was me. They're my kids. I didn't want to have that to have my son or my daughter to have that on their body.
And as this family slowly tries to regain some sort of normalcy in their lives again, they have a stern warning for the people responsible.
You almost killed my kids, especially my 1-year-old daughter, and I want you to pay for that. You're not getting away with that.
Now, this family is too scared to even walk outside of their home following this incident. It's gotten so bad, they tell me they're actively trying to move out of this neighborhood as soon as possible. Alex, back to you.
Thank you, Jeannie. And we also learned that the Sacramento Taco Festival is now looking for a new location away from Del Paso Boulevard, saying that this shooting is an example of growing crime in the area. And we will have more on that postponed event coming up tonight on Late News tonight at 11. All right, there are many questions tonight about whether the West Sacramento mayor's upcoming State of the City address is illegal and violates the Brown Act. The Chamber of Commerce is selling tickets to the event for $150 each, which means that not everyone will be able to attend the event like if it were free. David Loy with First Amendment Coalition says that everyone has the right to attend.
Anytime you have a majority of the city council gathering in one time and place to hear, discuss, deliberate, or vote on city business, that is a meeting governed by the Brown Act. Under the Brown Act, all meetings of the city council must be open to the public, and the public must have a right to attend and participate.
The city of West Sacramento released a statement claiming an exception of, quote, the attendance of a majority of members of the legislative body at a purely social or ceremonial occasion, provided that a majority of the members do not discuss among themselves business of a specific nature that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body of a local agency. So AKA the fee is, it's fine as long as most people aren't talking about the official business. So I will leave it up to you at home to decide whether or not the State of the City address is official business. All right, accessing medical care in North Sacramento just got easier for Grant High School students. A new health center at the high school will now offer mental health counseling, checkups, vaccinations, sports physicals, and exams, and more with no cost to students.
What we wanted to provide was an opportunity for students to receive both mental and physical health, as well as an essential pantry that helped to lower barriers and improve academic performance for our students.
The health center is named Pacer Takes Space and is made possible by multiple organizations, including the Neighborhood Wellness Foundation, Sacramento Native American Health Center, Twin Rivers Unified School District, and Sutter Health. It's been a big day at the state capitol. Mayors of the state's biggest cities say that they need more permanent funding to address the homelessness crisis. And the governor's bill, the governor included $1 billion in his latest budget for grant money for these cities. But as our political reporter Morgan Reiner explains, mayors, they want to double that number.
San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria says cities across the state are making progress placing people experiencing homelessness into shelter and housing.
However, we acknowledge that it's hard for many Californians to see these results. And that's because we're simply not keeping pace with the number of people who are becoming newly homeless.
A cycle he says more funding will help solve. $2 billion a year, each year, directly to cities, and $1.5 billion in additional funding for Project Homekey, which helps turn unused motels into housing.
This Homekey funding allows us to actually bring thousands of people inside into safer settings on their way to permanent housing. We've used it, and we've used it successfully. But the question is, every year, are we going to lose it?
But the fact that California had a budget surplus last year and is facing a deficit this year shows just how quickly the state's financial well-being can change. What's wrong with getting it on a yearly basis?
The individuals we're seeking to serve will not have their problem solved overnight. They will need months, if not years, worth of assistance, and we have to be able to actually budget for that.
Governor Gavin Newsom overall allocated a record $15.3 billion to help solve the crisis. If the governor and state lawmakers don't grant their additional wish,
if that's not possible, there are other things the state can do to help us. Number one is there's $360 million in bonus homeless assistance funding that is currently sitting on the sidelines that has already been appropriated that could be released today to help cities like mine house more people. We're asking the state to release that money. That is no additional cost to the state. That is money they've already allocated.
And the budget increase has been an ongoing ask, but there are still a few more weeks before lawmakers vote on that final budget. All right, coming up a little bit later in the show, we are talking PG&E, why they might be off the hook for some violations after 4 people died in the 2020 Zog fire that they caused.
And we're tracking how the heat is affecting some of the flood concerns in the high country.
Another story we're also featuring tonight, how a group is empowering others in preserving culture by practicing the Filipino martial art of Eskrima.
Carrying that's part of my heritage. For a woman, it means that I look at this as my safety.
We're back after this. All right, let's get things over to Monica. We're seeing those warmer temperatures, which means all that snow is melting. Flood watch time.
Everybody's trying to balance their thermostat as well, too. So
Not
it's
ready
just that
for the
time
bill.
of year. Lots to consider moving ahead into the next couple of days, and we're almost to the weekend as well. Flood watch in effect for the high country with some of the heat. Excessive snow melt will be filling some of those rivers, creeks, streams, and also low-lying areas with some moderate flooding possible late Thursday all the way through Monday evening. A look at those high temperatures throughout the state. We were in the 90s up and down the valley. A very warm afternoon. Normally Sacramento right around 81 degrees. Palm Springs another day in the 100s. And under that ridge of high pressure, we're going to stay with the warm weather, although we pick up a slight breeze for tonight. That's going to help cool us a bit into our Thursday. Sunset isn't until 8:12, so we still have a beautiful evening on tap. There's that high pressure ridge. It is going to draw up some moisture from the desert southwest, and that means a return to some thunderstorm activity as soon as Friday for the high country. That lingers into the weekend, and we're going to find an active weather pattern there, at least into early next week. Highs for tomorrow in the 70s for the high country, 80s down the hill to near 90, 60s along the coast, but we're still in the 80s throughout inland areas after morning lows in the 50s. It is quite nice in the mornings if you're trying to get some outdoor activities done, even some gardening or lawn work. Chance of thunderstorms in the high country by Friday. Again, that lasts through the weekend. Highs will be in the 60s, though, for the coast. So if you're looking to beat that heat, that is the place to be at least through early next week. But by the middle of next week, we're back to near average temperatures.
Coming up after the break, from egregious safety violations to no wrongdoing, the group that polices PG&E appears to be changing their minds. Firepower Money Team investigation coming up next. New one to the point tonight. The state agency that polices PG&E says the utility company committed, quote, egregious safety violations when it sparked the deadly Zog fire. Now the California Public Utilities Commission plans to let PG&E settle without admitting wrongdoing. But the big question is why? Firepower Money's Brandon Rittiman investigates tonight.
PG&E disasters have killed more than 100 people in the last decade. In 2020, the Zog fire, started by a PG&E power line, claimed the youngest life. Fela McLeod was only 8 years old when she burned to death in a pickup truck, driven by her mom, Elena, trying desperately to escape their home.
It might not have been intentional, I understand that. No one came after my family with guns and weapons, but there was negligence involved.
Zach McLeod wants PG&E to change. To do that, he says PG&E has to be held responsible for causing his wife and child's deaths. Also the deaths of Karen King and Ken Vossen in the Zog fire.
They're not admitting to wrongdoing.
PG&E won't be made to acknowledge wrongdoing under a settlement it negotiated behind closed doors with its government regulator, the California Public Utilities Commission. The CPUC plans to charge PG&E a $10 million fine for the Zog fire. We filmed its safety inspectors on the scene. They found PG&E didn't do proper inspections and failed to remove trees due to poor record keeping. But this week, the CPUC's 5 commissioners plan to vote on language that would not declare PG&E did anything wrong. An early draft said PG&E's offense was indeed severe. This week, CPUC plans to replace that language with the parties dispute both the existence and the severity of PG&E's alleged offense. The draft said it is reasonable to conclude that PG&E's conduct was egregious. That'll change to it is reasonable to consider the disputed facts.
When PG&E tells the PUC to jump, the PUC responds, how high?
Past PUC President Loretta Lynch told us this plan is more evidence her former agency's been captured by utilities. If you wonder why PG&E's racked up 91 felony convictions, she says this is a big part.
The reason they are a rogue corporation is because the PUC, the entity that the California Constitution sets to oversee and regulate this private utility, is not doing its job.
We asked the PUC why it feels it's appropriate to allow PG&E to settle the Zog fire without admitting wrongdoing. Agency spokesperson Terry Prosper declined to comment. The McLeod family hopes the commissioners do some soul searching.
People that regulate them need to maybe do a better job too.
Brandon Rittiman, ABC 10 News.
The CPUC's 5 governor-appointed commissioners plan to vote on this settlement at tomorrow's meeting, happening at 11 a.m. Anyone can make a public comment just by calling in. We do have more information on how you can participate at abc10.com. All right, so when you think of martial arts, you might envision what you see on the big screen, but Filipino Americans in Stockton are really hoping to change that perception by educating and preserving their culture by teaching Eskrima. It's a form of martial arts that started in the Philippines, and our Jeannie Nguyen shares how Eskrima was introduced to Stockton and what is being done to make sure that it really stays an important part of the community.
This Filipino martial art is not just about weapons, it's about basically angles of attack.
It's called Eskrima.
There, see.
And it's an important part of Stockton's prominent Filipino American community. This form of martial arts is ingrained in Filipino culture, and for gurus or instructors like Carlito Bonjoc and Dexter Labanog, it represents their home in the Philippines.
The other martial arts, you train empty hand, then you move on to weapons. With us, it's different. We train with the weapon first, then you start translating some of those movements to empty hand.
But the way it was brought to Stockton can be traced back to the 60s through a man they call Grandmaster Leo Giron. Labanog says Giron was introduced to Eskrima in the Philippines before coming to the United States. After coming to the States and serving in World War II, Giron felt pulled to bring it to Stockton following a tragic event.
He always refers to the nurse stories in Chicago.
In 1966, 8 Chicago student nurses were killed, some of them Filipino. Richard Speck was convicted for the murders. It was because of this crime that inspired Giron to bring Eskrima to Stockton. That story resonated with Michelle Joven.
I'm 66 years old. I'm a prime candidate.
And she can't help but wonder what would have happened to those 8 nurses had they had some sort of martial arts training.
If women would just learn to just fight with something like this, because you can do a lot with something on these ends. That's one of the things I carry around with me because I am not going to be a victim.
In an effort to continue to keep this Filipino tradition alive, the nonprofit organization Stockton Multi-Style Eskrima was formed, encompassing the original teachings of Jerome's style.
He would tell us about utilizing weapons that were readily available that they use every day, which was the long bolos and knife-cutting tools.
Once Jerome passed in 2002, the goal of the nonprofit was to continue his legacy for generations to come.
Young kids, the generation after and the several generations now after that, they have no connection. Their connection to our culture disappears. And so this is one thing that they can grab on.
Today, Bonjak continues to teach. He's the founder of Matasay Baguio, teaching his own specific style of Eskrima. It's a challenge he takes on even after losing the ability to use his legs.
I couldn't participate in a lot of sports, and but for some reason I was able to do Eskrima, and it improved my balance.
Eskrima classes are free to this day, and it's important it stays that way, especially as crime in Stockton continues to rise.
The way Stockton is right now, I think a lot of major cities also, there's a lot of potential to be a victim. Everybody should learn some kind of self-defense.
And while a majority of the focus of Eskrima is self-defense, the most important aspect of this is the preservation of the rich Filipino culture.
I'm proud of that, because it's part of my heritage. This is my city, this is my town. I live here, and I get to represent it. We still teach good Eskrima here.
And as Jeannie mentioned, those classes are free. And to make sure that those classes remain free, the organization, they hold an annual crab feed. It raised $10,000 so far this year. And all that money, it goes directly to funding those classes and the equipment too. Right after the break, we asked for your thoughts on Sacramento Police's budget proposal, and you delivered. We got your points coming up next. On yesterday's show, we told you about the controversy surrounding the Sacramento Police Department's request for significantly more money for the upcoming fiscal year, like $200 million more. And a handful of you reached out, you shared your thoughts, and I'd like to go ahead and share some of them with everybody else. So David wrote in, give them $20 million more. They are understaffed. We have Orlando adding his thoughts. He said, disgusting how the millions before didn't make a significant impact. More accountability and itemizing every penny would be the proper approach, not more money. Then we have Jalen. This person wrote in saying, at least save some for actual investment and job opportunities for the community as a whole. And then lastly, another viewer writing in saying, will they be planting any food gardens and picking up litter and training for counselors to prevent crime in the first place? Until then, the war on drugs and reactionary policing is like a hamster wheel. As always, thank you so much for letting us know your thoughts. If you want to learn more about the budget, you can head over to abc10.com/tothepoint. And we know this is a hot topic, so we'd like to continue the conversation. All you have to do is just text us at 916-321-3310, or you can always send us an email at tothepoint@abc10.com. And before we go, here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow. Sacramento High School's football field is in need of some major improvements to make it safer. It's full of patchy grass, large bare spots, weeds, and even potholes. And it needs better lighting, fences, and bleachers. Julius Douglas, a former Sacramento High School student who founded Seize the Moment to help youth in underserved communities, says that the field looks exactly the same as it did 10 years ago when he played football there.
I hope that they get a new facility, new field, new locker room, so they can feel comfortable, feel wanted. They have somewhere to come. They don't have to run to the streets. Get them babies a field.
Tomorrow at 6:30, we are looking at who's responsible for maintaining the field and what's being done right now to make sure that those students who use the field, of course, that they all feel safe. And we always want to hear what's going on in your community. Again, you can always text us, email us. I've also got Instagram and Facebook. You can reach out anytime. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow. Hey, it's Alex. Just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. I really love hearing from everyone, and I hope that you'll stay in touch. Reach out to me on Facebook at AlexBellTV, or you can email me at tothepoint@abc10.com, or you can even send me a text message at 916-321-3310.